Rains had finally come, softening the earth and filling the village of Osogbo with the scent of fresh growth. It was that time of year when everything felt renewed, but for me, the coming of the rains signaled something else, the return of Ireti. She had left when I was still a boy, sent to live with family in the city after her father, Baba Tunde, passed away. Baba Tunde had been the chief of our village, and as was tradition, his children were sent away to continue their studies, away from the small, quiet life of Osogbo. Ireti and I were close once, closer than most. We spent our days together, climbing trees, swimming in the river, and dreaming of futures we hadn't yet understood. I think I knew even then that I loved her, but we were children, and love was a word we didn't say. As the years passed, we both changed. I stayed behind, working the fields with my father, learning the ways of the land. Ireti, on the other hand, became someone else, someone I barely recognized. She returned only a few times, and each time it felt as if the gap between us grew wider, not just because of the distance, but because of what she had become. She was no longer the girl who ran barefoot in the dust beside me. She was someone different, and I wasn't sure if that difference was something I could understand. And then, one afternoon, there she was, walking down the dirt path into the village. I was sitting under the baobab tree when I saw her. Her brightly colored dress stood out against the green and brown of the landscape, her hair wrapped neatly, her steps measured. There was something graceful in the way she moved, something that made my heart beat faster, as if time had stood still. I stood up before I could stop myself. "You ready?" I said, my voice sounding different than I remembered it. She stopped and looked toward me, her face softening as she saw me. "Durajaye," she whispered, her smile warm but cautious. I walked towards her, unsure of what to say. I hadn't seen her in so long. So much had changed. I was a man now, a far cry from the boy I was when she left, but in that moment, it felt like nothing had changed. She was still the girl I had loved, even if that love had stayed buried for years.
"You're back," I said, the words feeling like an awkward greeting. "I've come to visit," she said, but I could hear something more in her tone. It was like she wasn't just visiting the village. She was trying to find something. Or maybe she was trying to remember something. The days that followed were strange. Ireti spoke often of her life in the city, how she had built herself up from nothing, the struggles she faced, and the people she met. She had become a different version of herself, someone who had learned to navigate a world far removed from the life we had known together. I listened, but I couldn't help feeling a bit lost in her words. It wasn't that I didn't care, it was just that the woman she had become seemed like someone I was only beginning to know. One evening, as the sun set and the air cooled, we sat by the fire. The rest of the village was preparing for the harvest festival, women singing in the distance as they worked. The fire crackled, the sweet smell of roasting yams filling the air, and we both sat in silence for a long while. Finally, Ireti spoke. "I never wanted to leave," she said, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. "But I had to. My family needed me to be someone else." I could hear the weight in her words. The city, the demands of her family. These were things she had never shared with me before. I nodded, my eyes on the fire. "And now? Do you feel at home here?" Firelight danced in her eyes, and for the first time since her return, I felt that familiar certainty, the certainty that we had both come back home. Firelight danced in her eyes, and for the first time since her return, I felt that familiar certainty,